Thank you. This is my eighth stint at DefCamp, and we are going to do something different today. It is storytelling, basically, but I'm going to tell you a somehow interesting story. It starts in February 2022, when some people in the eastern part of the world thought it would be a good idea to invade a sovereign country. Back then, in February 2022, for some of the people in tech and some of the people in the telecommunication business in Europe, distributed denial of service attacks were basically day-to-day, right? Everyone knew about it, everyone had some mitigation actions, everyone was monitoring some of the traffic, inbound traffic to our interfaces. But of course, things changed since February 2022, and for a brief period of time, maybe 3 or 4 months, a number of, well, state-backed malicious actors groups, APTs, if you'd like to call them that, began to create communities around their ideology. And their ideology is, well, I'm not sure what their ideology is, but the promise was basic. You as a volunteer will join our community. We will give you the tools for you to participate in some of our attacks. The attacks are going to target some of the infrastructure of, unfriendly nations, i.e. NATO-aligned states or European Union-allied states, or pretty much everyone who had a saying regarding the war of Russia in Ukraine. Since 2022, the national hacktivism in Russia has increased in terms of volumes of operations 16-fold, while measured in DDoS attacks, compared to before 2022. 16-fold. I'm not sure that it exists anything that has increased 16-fold in terms of good things since 2022. But this has. And almost ninefold uptick in ransomware attacks. But we are going to focus on the DDoS stuff because it's actually pretty juicy and somewhat funny. Well, what we're doing at Orange is that we have a practice, it's a very small practice, of monitoring very noisy APT groups. This is something we do out of passion for learning about how malicious actors tend to orchestrate their attacks, how they choose their targets, and pretty much to prepare ourselves, to prepare Orange and our B2B customers against such attacks. And for the, for the past maybe 18 months or so, we've been monitoring several APTs with operations in Europe. Some of them are from Iran, some of them are from China, some of them are from North Korea, but of course, most of them are Russia-aligned or from Russia. And today I'll focus my story on no-name 057 parentheses 16 end parentheses. I really don't have any other mean of reading their name. I'm not sure what it means. I'm not sure it means anything. It's just what they call themselves, right? This is a group, a bunch of people that they spun up from some people from Killnet. That was one somewhat notorious APT back in 2020 and 2021, and from APT 29. They don't have a goal, a persistent goal of targeting and disrupting a very specific infrastructure or a very specific target, but they are very noisy. They pretty much target everyone that isn't Russia's friend. So, of course, they use some tools. They have a sort of mission statement. They cooperate, they collaborate, they exchange information, they stage their operations, and they do some pretty funny stuff, but that's like 5 slides from here. What they did back in April 2022 is that they learned from some of the tools that were used maybe 15 years back. Probably some of you have some memories, fun or not, about LOIC or HOIC, right? The low orbit ionic cannon and high orbit ionic cannon. Those were some basic tools that were used with clients that were deployed on endpoints to, on volunteers endpoints to create various botnets in DDoS attacks. They learned from that, and they quickly understood that if they are to provide such a tool, they have the positive and the necessary political environment or context that they could probably fuel a very, very large-scale botnet, basically. So they went on and they wrote this DDoS IA attack tool, and they started disseminating that tool to some of their social media channels. Their self-declared mission was to counteract any open hostility towards Russia. And they were basically targeting NATO, right, and NATO-aligned countries. But they did state that they would never target innocent people, even if those innocent people, whatever that means, were citizens of these NATO-aligned countries or NATO members, right? They distributed this DDoS attack tool, and they gamified the onboarding in the DDoS IA attack tool. They created this crowdsourced gaming platform of sorts, where participants who willingly installed that tool on some of their devices, they rack up points, and those points, as you will see in a short time, those points will, well, basically bring ruble, like Russian rubles, into their accounts. The map of targets from data that we've collected since early 2023 shows a very distinct pattern of aggression. This is on a scale of 1 to 50, number of unique targets up to 2024 October. As you can see, pretty much is in the western part of the world, right, in the Western Hemisphere. They targeted the United States, Canada, of course Ukraine, they were the recipients of pretty much most of the attacks, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and pretty much every other NATO member state and the European Union as a whole. But they did focus some of their attacks in Central Europe and in Ukraine. You can see there that Romania has a bit of a bright shade of orange because, of course, we were the recipients of attacks as well. Their targeting is opportunistic. As said before, they don't have a very clear set of rules on who should the victims be, but they pretty much go for low-hanging fruits. They attack telecommunication operators and cloud services providers. The public-facing stuff, right? The public-facing websites. They attack the banking websites, the banking infrastructure websites, but they do call it that their attacks are against banking infrastructure. Well, let's agree to disagree. I honestly don't think that if the website of a certain bank is to be offline for a couple of minutes, that is an attack against banking infrastructure. They began attacking energy companies, the public-facing CRMs, some of the point-of-sale stuff, and of course, public institutions, the government websites, the local and regional administration. Those were the primary targets for their manifesto, right? Because their attack in itself, it was a manifesto. They try to mask some ransomware stuff on the backdrop of their DDoS operations. They tried to do some exfiltration, some crypto stuff, wipers, you know, the usual. And they did manage to have some successful attacks, specifically against the websites and against the domains, the security domains of public institutions. I really don't think that there's any need to, you know, to insist on the fact that some public institutions are a bit lacking in terms of cybersecurity. They have a clear coordination, although they don't have, again, a clear manifesto in terms of what to attack. They pick 5 to maybe 15 targets per day. They do this every morning on the Telegram channel. They study the websites, they study what opportunities could that attack bring for other attacks, right? They behave in a less emotional way than other APTs, than other groups on since the onset of the war in Ukraine. They have this military-like discipline in terms of operations. And, of course, they do brag about all of their attacks, mostly unsuccessful. They use checkhost to read states, availability states for the websites that they attack, but they only screenshot the state in checkhost, I don't know, up to 20 or 30 seconds post-attack, when most sites and most load balancers and most web infrastructure is usually in a state that they do not communicate, they do not respond to the calls from checkhost. They have some 10 Telegram channels, and trust me, it is extremely challenging to monitor 10 Telegram channels where people exchange information in Russian. I do not speak Russian. I don't know any person in my professional circle who speaks Russian at a sufficient level to understand the subtleties of the language. So I had to use a lot of LLMs. I had to use a lot of AI to get a better grip on what are those people talking about. But they do have 10 Telegram channels, not 11, not 9, and they use it religiously. They have various channel names, and they have a huge number of users, maybe 60,000 users on all these channels, distributed among the 10 channels. And they use specific channel for specific information exchange, right? They have a Telegram channel for the DDoS orchestration part. Basically, if you are not able, you don't have the technical capability to run that DDoS IA client on your endpoint, they will help you. They'll provide you what you need on that channel. They have channel for general discussions. They have channel for bragging, for exchanging screenshots of websites that were attacked. And they have channel in English as well. Because as you could imagine, being a propagandistic, volunteer-fueled APT, they do reach to people who don't speak Russian. So English, the language spoken in the West, as a great common denominator, is, of course, what they use to orchestrate and to interact with people who do not speak Russian. They have support channels. They use, I'm not going to mention names, not brand names, but they use that very one ticketing tool that all of us are using, right? In order to manage support tickets. And they have support in the English language. I've interacted with their support bot. They have a chat bot. I've interacted with that. I've asked some questions. I had some questions about how I could optimize that DDoS IA tool for some specific software and hardware environment. I got to interact with a human operator. He quickly got bored of my questions and he just left the chat. Or maybe she, I'm not sure if it was a lady or a man. Either way, as I've said before, their motivation is mostly virtue signaling. They do this for the bragging right. They do this in order to showcase their supporters and maybe, I'm not sure, even some state-aligned entities that they are active in driving this aggression, this cyber aggression against anyone who is not aligned in terms of values, I'm not sure, with what Russia does in Ukraine. So they use catchphrases, right, in their communications, in their Telegram channels. And they make use of this specific semi-accurate translations to respond to most questions that are coming from outsiders, from people that interact with them for the first time. For example, if they say that if they target some company's server, right, that's in some cloud, the DDoS traffic will increase the cost for that company because they want to, because they imagine that company will actually pay for the DDoS traffic to that cloud service provider. What it means that they want to cause financial damage to their targets. What actually happens is pretty much nothing. No one pays for DDoS traffic through CSPs. They say that if they are to take some company's website offline for a couple of days or 3 days or something, search engine optimization will then kick in and downrank that website, which is, of course, false. This is not how SEO works. It never was. This is not the case. They say that even if the DDoS, the targets they recover from the DDoS attack, their reputation will remain tarnished. Which, well, I'm not sure how to interpret this, but the case was that for most of their targets in the campaigns in the previous 2 years, their reputation was not affected by the fact that some website was down for maybe a couple of minutes. But what I'm getting at is that they use this basically propaganda to share what their audience wants to read and wants to hear. They want to give some sentiment, some sort of purpose to their actions. Because the truth is that their actions are not that impactful. They have an operating model, and they have incentives for volunteers. Essentially they use a pyramid scheme of sorts with heroes. The heroes are some of the participants from the early stage of the group's creation. And they try to onboard new heroes to get them to install the DDoS IA client to carry out the attacks. There is a lot of engagement farmed on Russian social media, on vkontakte, vk.ru, and on Telegram channels. And the heroes are rewarded. They are paid in rubles. What they do is that they register with this Telegram channel and they get an ID, which is unique for each hero. And then for each hero that publishes proofs of their malicious activity, their successful malicious activity in those Telegram channels, they will receive payment. And the payment is, of course, although the payment here in my slides are expressed in rubles, the payment is received and transaction to crypto. The tool, the DDoS IA client, is actually not that impressive. If I remember correctly, they first wrote it in Python, they then switched to Go, but they do have builds available for pretty much most of the software and hardware ecosystems that one might use. There's no obfuscation of the client IP with this DDoS IA client, so most of their volunteers are kind of exposed in terms of ISPs having visibility to the source of the attack. And they exchange some information in order to receive at runtime, in order to receive a target list. And the target list, it is encoded and it is published each day at 9 a.m. Moscow local time. And it usually encompasses all the targets that have been, it's incremental, right? It has all the targets that have already been provided in previous iterations, and those 5 up to 20, 15, 20 new targets that they decide in their Telegram channels. There's just some basic interaction between the client and the C2C server. Once they receive their encoded targets list, it's a set and forget type of deal. You just press a button and the DDoS IA tool just starts generating traffic to those targets. Now, we're getting to the somewhat funny part. There's a lot of engagement farming in those Telegram channels. They want to add users. It has become a sort of secondary purpose, and that secondary purpose, to some extent, has transformed in their principal goal. Because, again, their DDoS stuff were not that successful. But they were quick to realize that many people wanted to join their mission, but those people do not possess the technical skills or the required infrastructure to actually participate in the attacks, right? Maybe they don't know how to install a client, right, a DDoS-IA client. Maybe they don't have the required bandwidth from their ISP. Maybe they're simply in a position that they do not want to be bothered with this. So they were quickly to come up with this scheme where participants who would like to join no name 057 parenthesis 16 parenthesis could participate by providing some donations, of course, in crypto. The group then said on their Telegram channels that the donations would have been used to purchase some cloud infrastructure that they would otherwise would need it to conduct their attacks, to host their C2Cs, to buy some VPN connectivity and stuff like that. And they promised to have a sort of transparency report each 6 months. They promised that they will publish this file of sorts where they could go to each purchase, each payment that they did from the monies from the crypto that they would otherwise receive from their supporters through donations. The funny stuff was that, of course, it was a crypto scheme, right? It was a pyramid scheme. One higher tier hero would then onboard five lower tier heroes who would pay in crypto to be part of this glorious, that's what they call themselves, right? This glorious collective of hackers. And each of those 5 heroes would then, onboard 5 more and so on, so forth. And it was the case that somewhere in mid-2024, I believe it was June, they started to collaborate with some other APTs in Russia and in China. And there was this 3rd-tier group that got access to their Telegram channels, and they tried to phish the users in that Telegram channels and to get them to insert their crypto credentials in order to steal their wallets. This was one of the funniest things that had happened in June 2024, at least for me, because it was basically bad actors, bad actors. I'm not sure to what extent that phishing was successful, but they had a lot of words between them after that. And the group kind of went silent for a bit. So during the summer, they were mostly active on just a few Telegram channels. They had some groups on WhatsApp, and I believe that they even published something on Twitter or X, whatever. But their operations kind of went down in terms of intensity. My understanding was, and my interpretation is that this had happened because they really couldn't get along with other APT groups that were conducting similar type of attacks, and they had some issues in terms of financing. I've highlighted a phrase here, and again, this is my sufficient reasoning, that there is evidence and there are artifacts that nation-state entities have supported this group at their formation. The initial CAPEX, well, it basically was paid in crypto, but by a nation-state affiliated entity of probably the Russian government. But again, I believe that this doesn't surprise anyone. Some other interesting stuff. You might remember that last year in June, the PMC Wagner private army or whatever those guys are or were, they tried to take over Moscow. So this was some internal dispute, some internal political and military dispute in the Russian Federation. Well, this group, no name 057, they targeted the websites of PMC Wagner. That's funny in itself. I mean, they did manage to take down one of the websites and deface another website that the group was using to promote in some African countries. They replaced the landing page with some message saying that the PMC Wagner are basically traitors and that no one should have any sorts of connection with them. In September 23, as mentioned, they announced some alliances with some other APT groups, but after the scams that happened during this summer, those friends quickly became foes. They've announced on the Telegram channel that they no longer work together because, again, they fished each other and they managed to steal crypto from each other. As statistic goes, because I feel obligated to have some sorts of statistics in these slides. And if you did not read or paid attention to what I've showed in the slide so far, we've monitored more than 1,500 operations since early 2023, but mostly in EU 27 countries. We've monitored 15 operations in Romania. We have gone through and read and interacted with local authorities in terms of 50 formal reports from national and state level authorities in Europe. And we've discovered that there were less than 20 successfully confirmed victims. And well, for me, a successful victim means that a web-based public assets of sorts is unavailable for more than 12 hours. We've used public and open source intel in various sources. We've used some of the tools that we are developing and we have been using in Orange Romania for deep CTI. We've used public information from our colleagues at Orange Cyber Defense, Mandiant, and of course, Recorded Future. Now, for the notable ops in Romania. 2 months ago, the group announces a large-scale operations against Romanian telecommunication infrastructure. As you could imagine, I work for Orange Romania. I have received multiple screenshots and emails from colleagues and people, friends, partners, collaborators, telling me that, hey, someone in Russia is going to attack telcos in Romania. And of course, we began to prepare. We are always in a sufficient state of preparedness when it comes to DDoS attacks. But this, of course, raised our attention level a bit higher than usual. In September 2026, they disseminated the results of that large-scale operation against Romanian telecommunication infrastructure. Their successes were TS2.tech, which this group said they are one of the largest internet providers in Romania. I'm not sure if someone from TS2.tech is here. Again, I mean definitely no disrespect. It was the first time that I've learned that this company existed. I'm aware of who are the largest internet providers in Romania. This company is definitely not among the largest internet providers in Romania. And they attacked tvhdonline.org, stating that they are a large Romanian television service. Show of hands, please, who has used this website in the past 5 years? Do you remember seriale.ro or something like that? Yeah, that's the largest Romanian television service. It's like the website that publishes some streams, some free and publicly available streams to that interface. And of course, they claimed that they had a significant attack against cfr.ro. That's the website of the national Romanian railway commercial operator. But please note that the website in itself is, it was the presentation, the corporate website, right? It was not the interface used for the ticketing interface or for their support interface. And that significant attack was meant that the website was down and restored in less than 21 minutes. Well, you know, you pretty much get what you give, but these notable ops in Romania are what led me to choose this topic for my talk on this stage. I am not in a position to say, I don't want to say that this group should not be taken seriously. They should be taken seriously. They have a large-scale volunteer-fueled operation, and they can orchestrate disruptive DDoS attacks against targets that are otherwise not well protected. What I'm saying is that most of the things that they do, or at least have done so far, is bragging, right? Is virtue signaling. Is saying that they are capable of doing some things and that one should expect the result of those activities in terms of this amount of disruption, and you end up with this amount of disruption, which is, again, a good thing, but for a security researcher, it's kind of boring. And this brings me back to my initial question and the end of my presentation. Oh, and I'm actually on time. Was it something we said? What made them actually start this large DDoS operation against us? Because the Telegram channel, as you can see, this is, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. It's like a soldier in the Russian army, probably in the Red Army, trying to kill some type of snake. I'm not sure what this should mean. But their statement was always in terms of, hey, we are patriots because we are going to help our motherland, fatherland, whatever it is that they call it, to fight against those who, I don't know, want Russia out of Ukraine. So, was it something that we said? I don't know, probably. But yesterday, so this was yesterday, right? This group attacked DefCamp. They just scrolled through LinkedIn, I'm not sure, and they read something about their name, their APT name being part of the schedule here, and they DDoS def.camp. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds. And they DDoS def.camp. And then they bragged about it. They said that this was an IT conference of sorts full of Romanian Russophobes. I'm Romanian, I'm definitely not a Russophobe. I'm not sure if it was my presentation, maybe some other speakers, maybe someone else references them in some ways, but they took this in a sense of meaning that they were somewhat responding to something that had not happened, because this was yesterday. If it was my talk is happening as we speak, today. Maybe I would have bragged about them. Maybe I would have said a lot of nice things about them. And please bear in mind that if my understanding of this talk is correct, I did not say any non-truths about them or any bad things about them. It was simply data that we've been monitoring, we've collected, and now I'm disseminating it to you. So, was it something we said? I don't know, probably yes. Do I care? I honestly don't. This was my 20, 30 minutes of probably, basically nothing. What I invite you all to do is have a go and read our Business Internet Security Report. This is our 7th edition. It's our first edition written in Romania. You can find out a bit more about our activity in terms of researching threats, in terms of innovation, developing stuff, building new stuff, and in broader terms, making sure that our infrastructure and our customers' infrastructures are prepared against such attacks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So if you want to volunteer in the future, at least you know where you shouldn't. We have time for one question, so please be quick and raise your hand. If you in the middle, I saw the first raise of hand, so we'll take that one because I saw a couple of hands raised. So just 1 second.
Hi. So I wanted to ask, since this group looks like a set of more of kind of a beginner actors, bad actors, do you think in any way these groups are used by maybe not state entities, but bigger actors and more advanced groups to just lay the path of some kind of vulnerable.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I don't have any artifacts proving that they are used in the sense of operations by state-level actors, other than their initial capital expenditure was supported through some crypto by some state agency in Russia. But I have monitored the Telegram channels, and bigger groups, well, they took over some of their operations, right? They provided them with new targets, they provided them with new TTPs. So yes, the brief answer is yes. Anyway, I'll be at the Orange booth if you'd like to chat a bit more about, well, this. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You.
Bye.